We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. Still got this cold. It's getting better. My voice is getting better. Still got the sniffles, still got the cough, and I'm probably going to cough during this podcast, but what the hell? We'll deal with it. Now, I wanted to give you some good news, some things that are coming up, or one thing that's coming up. You remember I was talking about this guy on TikTok. His name was Jeff underscore HVAC underscore 69. He is a dumb Trumplefuck. And one day, one of my followers or peers came to me and said she was in a live with this guy and he was just obnoxious, an obnoxious Trumplefuck. And she said, "Why don't you go get him?" And I go, "I don't really do that. I don't have that much interest in talking to Trumplefucks. They don't have a comprehension for truth or anything." So anyway, I did go look at his videos, and a couple of things struck me about those videos. He's a young guy, about 35 or so. Um, and he's pretty arrogant. Well, all he simply does is he stitches liberal news stories and then he shits on it. Really no substance, just a bunch of whataboutism and ranting and raving and that sort of shit. And that kind of annoyed me, but even still, I wasn't really that interested in the guy. But then he went off and said something that kind of pissed me off. Told me he's not too bright and told me he could stand a lesson or two. He went on and said, "I'm the best debater on TikTok." And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you got 6,000 followers. I can think of 20 other people on TikTok currently that could kick your ass in any kind of debate. Where do you get off saying that sort of thing? But he was very full of himself, like they are, kind of narcissistic. I'm the best. But there was something weird about him. It's not as adversarial as most Trumplefucks. There was kind of a goofiness to him. And he was kind of an amenable guy, but he was still spewing this Trump shit. So I did a TikTok saying, "Look, man, you talk about being a great debater, but nothing on your videos tells me you're a great debater. So if you want to debate, you certainly can come on the Rational Boomer podcast and I'll give you a chance, give you a fair chance to debate with one of the libtards." He said on his podcast or on his bio page, "Taking down liberals one at a time." And I thought to myself, I'm a liberal. I'm game. Come show me what you got. Now, honestly, I didn't expect to hear back from him, but I did. He said, "Yeah, I'll do it." I said, "Okay, well, tell me when you want to do it, what time of day, and what day you want to do it." And surprisingly, he came through and we exchanged emails back and forth. And as I read those emails, even those showed he was not your typical Trumplefuck, kind of amenable to a certain extent and kind of goofy. Um, but we did set up a time to do the debate. We're going to record it on Thursday night, and it will go out for consumption early Friday morning, like just after midnight or so. We're going to meet up about 9 my time, 7 his time. He's on the West Coast. And as I'm talking to him, the way he's talking, I had to ask him, I said, "Dude, just be honest with me up front. Do you believe the bullshit that you're saying? Or is this kind of some like performance? Is this tongue in cheek? Because you don't seem that serious." And he goes, "No, no, I'm very serious. I'm serious as a heart attack. I stand by what I say, and I like taking down liberals. I get hungry for liberals." I said, "Well, dude, now that's getting a little cringy, you know?" Like I said, he's weird, but that's okay. I can deal with weird. We're talking about facts. If we're talking about liberals and we're talking about Trumplifucks, I'm ready to wade into it. And so I just wanted to read a couple of emails he sent to me just to get a sense of how he talks. Um, we agreed on 7 o'clock his time, 9 o'clock my time. He said, "Okay, perfect. Let's do Thursday, 7 p.m. What's the duration? And also, please announce it on TikTok so your followers know. Thank you. Yeah, you see what he's doing there? These guys that are Trumplafucks, they don't have much of a platform, so they're really anxious to grab onto somebody else's platform so they can spew their stuff and people can find out just how great a geniuses they are. You have to excuse me for doing this. I got to, otherwise I look stupid. Anyway, um, I said, dude, all the TikTok people know about it, and they're more anxious to hear this than I am. So don't worry about that. And then he goes on to say, P.S. I'm only agreeing with this if you go live with me as well. After all, I'm the greatest debater on TikTok. So it's only fair we also debate on TikTok. Agreed? Regards, Jeff. Now, Jeff's already been banned on TikTok once. I guess he got his main account back, and that's what we'll do the live on. But see what he's doing here. He's thinking he's trying to intimidate me, doing what Trumplafucks do, trying to play the bully. I'll come on your podcast, but you got to come on my live. First, I told him, I said, Jeff, I don't need you at all. I'm doing just fine. You got 6,000 followers. I have 291,000. I really don't need you. I'm actually giving you a gift here, giving you exposure on a platform that you could never do for yourself. So fuck yourself. But I think I surprised him. I said, no, I'd be happy to come on your live. I said, but be careful what you ask for. Because here's the deal. If you come on my podcast and I embarrass you, and I most certainly will, that's my audience. That doesn't cost you much. I said, but if you have a live and I go on your live and I embarrass you, your whole stick is out the window. So think about that. I said, maybe make that decision after the podcast. See how well you fare there and see if you want to do it a fucking again. But see, I think he thinks that by me going on the live, that he's going to have the home court advantage, that all his fans will be there and I'll be backed into a corner. Well, first of all, if that's really the way it was going to be, I don't care if there's 5 Trumplafucks or 100 Trumplafucks. They're all dumb. But I explained to him, I said, you know what? I know having lives are important to you. He goes, yeah, that's where I got famous. I go, dude, you're not fucking famous. You're not fucking famous. He said, but that's where people found out how good I am at taking down liberals. I said, well, if they're as bright as you, I'm not worried. I said, here's what you got to understand. All the people that want to listen on my podcast will be there. I'll probably have more people listening to that podcast than anything I've gotten up to this point, which will be cool. I said, but when you do a live, you don't think all those people on TikTok that follow me are going to come to that live? And then all of a sudden your home court advantage ain't shit. I said, you have 6,000 followers. I don't know who dubbed you the greatest debater on TikTok, but we go straighten that out. You are not the greatest debater. I'm not the greatest debater on TikTok, but I'll still kick your ass. So the last part of it, he says, sounds good. Yes, 7 p.m. my time, 9 p.m. yours. See you then. I look forward to it. As far as my lives go, I only have 7,000 followers, but average about 50,000 viewers a show. So when you do come, it'll be spicy. Spicy. See what I mean? I get hungry for liberals. It's going to be spicy. He's a weird motherfucker, which is going to make this more interesting. I don't know if he's trying to throw me off by being nice, calling me sir. And the last line here, he says, see you Thursday, brother. I don't know if he's trying to throw me off, but I tell you what, I'm a pretty low key guy. I don't get angry real easy. But when I'm in a competition, when I was a young guy playing football and I wasn't the biggest guy, I ended up having to be the meanest or the craziest guy. So when I go into a competition, there's a little switch I flip on, and then I can be an asshole. So if you listen to the podcast and I sound like a bigger asshole, than I normally do. It's by design. But we'll see how he fares. I don't think it's going to go well for him at this point. All right, we have some emails. Let's get to those. Hi, Mike. First of all, I start my day off with coffee and listening to you and thoroughly enjoy the content you share with us. Always enjoy your guest and knowing that there are younger folks like Old Soul, Eric, and Jeff coming up behind us boomers gives me hope for our country and our grandchildren's future. Can you or someone in your audience help me understand how one man, Tuberville, is allowed to hold up advancements for our service women and men since February? I do understand his why, the selfish prick, but I do not understand the how. It's fucking despicable. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not an expert on this, but I know roughly how it's working. When they vote on these advancements and money and all that stuff, because there's so many, what they do is they ask for a unanimous vote. And in order for it to pass, it has to be unanimous. That speeds things up, gets things done. Well, Tuberville at this point decides he's going to be the flying the ointment, if you will, and he votes against it. So now it's not unanimous. So now you have to go through the whole voting process. And when you have hundreds of people you got to vote on, clearly it's time restrictive and it's impossible for it to get through all these people. So Tuberville is being a dick, and unnecessarily being a dick. And this will probably cost him his election next time he's up. He's in Alabama. A lot of military folks down in Alabama, and they ain't liking this. So Tuberville's cutting his own throat, and not surprising because he's not a very bright man. That's not a complete explanation, but gives you a rough idea how he's pulling this off. Now, the emailer goes on, fucking Trump's rhetoric has become more and more appalling. Now, the next part, she said, don't say on the air. And discretion is the better part of valor. It's nothing dirty. It's no swear words. It's just kind of hopes on how Donald Trump might be handled. And I'd have to agree. It's probably best not to talk about that here. She goes on to say, I happened upon Glenn Beck's radio show last night and was appalled at the BS he and his sidekick spewed. They actually believe that President Obama runs the country and that Michelle at the last minute will be running for the Democratic ticket. What the fuck? I used to listen now and then to Rush, Sorry You're Dead, Not Sorry, Limbaugh. I've always believed in this phrase, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. I believe in order to have an intelligent conversation, one should know what others are thinking. I would like to end this email with the words of Black Boot, who's on TikTok. Inmate Trump 2024. Best, Gracie. Well, thank you, Gracie. And I agree with you. I don't know what's in these people's minds. The idea that Glenn Beck may believe that Obama's still running the country and Michelle will be the president is ridiculous. I think he's smart enough to know that that's not true, but I think he believes that it will enrage his audience, which is a bunch of dumb Trump-la-fucks. That's why I don't listen to these people, because it's so ridiculous and it's insulting to even listen to. All right. Next up is Freda. She says, hi, I'm from Canada and I listen to you all the time. You might ask yourself, why would I care? It's not my country. Well, it is my world, and it's in deep trouble if a maniac like Trump ever got hold of the helm again. But that's not the purpose of this note to you. My purpose is to thank you for explaining the situation and its importance to people in a way that everybody can understand. Let's face it, it can be confusing at the best of times, even with an education, because of the lies and brainwashing attempts by Republicans. I just wanted to say, good job. Keep it up. There's no doubt you're reaching people in a positive way. I like your style. Respectively, Freda. Thank you very much. It's not just the Republicans. It's the media as well. I don't know why they do it, but they're very confusing with the things they give. They're trying to extract emotions from you as opposed to inform you. And they want those emotions because they believe it factors into viewership. And when it comes down to it, the bottom line, it's about money, not journalism, not informing you, not what's best for this country. It's about putting money in their fucking pockets. And that's part of the reason why I started doing the Rational Boomer TikTok and podcast. I'd see these stories and I'd feel the same way you would. Wow, that sounds horrible. That sounds like Armageddon. But then I would look into it. I'd read the stories, I'd look at the sources, and then I'd realize they're not telling us the whole story. All is not lost. And so I decided when I was going to go on TikTok, I go, what do? I need a niche. And I didn't have a fucking niche. Apparently I did, but I didn't realize I did. And I went on TikTok and basically took these stories and explained them more in depth than the media will, hopefully informing people better of what's going on, maybe giving some hope and not constantly trying to scare people. So I appreciate that, Freda. In doing the TikToks, if I'm doing some people good, then it's all worth it for me to do this. This isn't just an ego trip for me, that there's something actually being gained by the people who listen. And I couldn't ask for much more than that. So thank you, Freda. All right, the next one comes from Lee. You remember Lee, he was on the show, very smart man, very articulate man, knows a lot about the law, even though he's a teacher, but he's a very smart guy. And he's got an interesting take on the documents case. He says, hey, Boomer, sell the documents case. Judge Cannon is going to allow Trump and his team to ignore ex parte, separate briefings because of the nature of classified documents to avoid gray mail. Gray mail is the viewing and using of classified info to leverage the info to get charges reduced in return to not disclosing classified info. It's also called blackmail. Judge Cannon is going to allow the defense and the DOJ to do these motions equally, when normally it's simply an effort for the DOJ to safeguard the content of classified documents in an ex parte. The good thing about this is that the DOJ will submit an interlocutory motion to have a judgment rendered as to why Judge Cannon makes this extraordinary decision. The interlocutory sends a signal that she's outside of the judicial norms. This makes the case stronger that the DOJ can use as an example to get her to recuse herself from the case. It illuminates her partisanship toward the defendant in direct contravention of the judicial ethics rules. And he lists the rules. Number one, a judge should uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary. Number two, a judge should avoid impropriety and appearance of impropriety in all activities. Imagine that. Hopefully they can get her recused, Lee. And it's kind of something I've said all along, too. People are worried about this Florida case and that Jack Smith isn't doing enough. I think Jack Smith knows exactly what he's doing. He's biding his time and taking her down the primrose path to set her up to get her to recuse herself. In order to do this, it's going to be have to be absolutely perfect, and Jack Smith knows what's up. So I think that's what he's doing, and Lee backs that up with his email. So thank you very much, Lee. Next one is Darren. He says, just got done listening to the podcast. I can't wait for this great debater to come on. Anyone with the number 69 in his handle is either juvenile or a douchebag. And I think in this case, both apply. Hope you're feeling better for this beatdown. You could do it without both hands. This guy is in deep trouble, Darren. And I couldn't agree more. Again, it's not that I'm any genius, that this guy is an imbecile, not very bright, not very good at debate, in spite of the fact that he claims to be the best on TikTok. I can think of some folks he'd have some trouble with. I can think of some folks I'd have trouble with, but I get to talk to him. And when I talk to him, it's not going to go well for him. People will say to me, well, he'll just talk loud, he'll talk long, he'll talk over you. No, he won't. Because whatever he can do I can do better than he does, simply because I've been doing it longer. I've been doing it for 45 years. Talking is the only talent I have. So I pride myself in being able to deal with various characters who have various strategies. And the strategy he might employ is something I've run across many times, from my father to everybody else I've dealt with in between that happens to be a narcissist or a dumb shit. It's not going to be hard to get this guy straight. You have to understand, when a guy like this comes in to a debate or in a live or something like that, um, he is going to be trying to take control of the situation. That's what they do. They're narcissists, so they're freaks about control. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to let him do that. And there's a number of ways you can do that. Talk louder and longer. Um, Kind of push him back on his heels by making fun of him. You know what I mean? He'll say something and I'll make a joke about it. Not a serious joke where he's going to get angry, but he's going to get his feelings hurt. And that's going to fuck with his head, because he can't be in control of anything if this guy's hurting his feelings. I know how to deal with these motherfuckers. I'm not worried about him in the least. And I'm looking forward to it too. Uh, and I told him, I said, "You really think you can do this, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, this is going to make it all the more fun for me." He says, "Why?" And I said, "Because it's fun to beat somebody like you, but it's even better when I can blindside you and you actually think you're going to win. So get ready, motherfucker. And I know you want me on your live too. And I'm happy to show up on your live." He thinks he's scaring me by making me go on the live. Actually, I'm happy to do it. He thinks he's bringing me to his home court. His buddies, his fans will gang up on me. Well, he's got two things to worry about. If I kick his ass in my podcast, not a big deal, because nobody likes him anyway. But if I go to his live and kick his ass, then his whole shtick is up. He's not the best debater of all time. His fans will see that he's not, and then he's in trouble. See, this is a good opportunity. The things I'm going to say, I'm going to be saying in the live to Trumblefucks, and then ask them to fucking denounce what I've said or prove that what I said is wrong. They're going to learn some things. They may not like it. They may not accept it, but they're going to learn some shit. And if he thinks only his buddies are going to be there, well, he's in for a surprise, because I'll guarantee you there'll be a ton of rational boomer peers on TikTok that show up in that live as well. Excuse me. Anyway, let's move on to some news. We had an interesting story come out about the Supreme Court. You know how we love the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court announced Monday that it has adopted an ethics code for the first time. Imagine that. The highest court in the land finally has an ethics code. This is a step that comes in response to its justices, particularly Clarence Thomas, facing scrutiny for undisclosed gifts from wealthy political donors. But of course, Democratic senators and progressive court reform groups are already saying it does next to nothing because there's no way to enforce it. I mean, this is what I've said. Look, you got a code of ethics, but you created the code of ethics. So what does that say? And then how do we enforce it? Now, apparently, all 9 justices signed on to the court's new code of conduct. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, Elena Kagan, Brett Kavanaugh have previously voiced support for a formal ethics code in the aftermath of stories by ProPublica and other news outlets revealing Thomas's previously undisclosed ties to mega donor Harlan Crow. Now, it's an interesting thing. It's a 15-page thing, and it's pretty obtuse and pretty ridiculous. I'm going to read the first page, and there's something about it that angers me, and it'll anger you too. It goes like this: Supreme Court of the United States statement of the court regarding the code of conduct. The undersigned justice are promulgating this code of conduct to set out succinctly and gather in one place the ethics, rules, and principles that guide the conduct of the members of court. For the most part, these rules and principles are not new. The court has long had equivalent of common law ethics rules, that is, a body of rules derived from a variety of sources, including statutory provisions, the code that applies to other members of the federal judiciary, ethics advisory opinions issued by the Judicial Conference Committee on Codes of Conduct and Historic Practice. The absence of a code, however, has led in recent years to the misunderstanding that the justices of this court, unlike all other jurists in this country, regard themselves as unrestricted by any ethics rules. To dispel this misunderstanding, we are issuing the code, which largely represents a codification of principles that we have long regarded as governing our conduct. November 13th, 2023. Well, that's fair enough to say, but here's the fucking matter of it. You may suggest that these codes and these ethics have always been there. Then please explain to me how Clarence Thomas has gone on all these lavish trips paid for by a Republican mega donor. Explain to me how he took a loan for a $250,000 RV that he never paid back. You may very well have had these codes or these rules in place, but you certainly don't enforce them. Because if those codes actually did exist, something would have happened to Clarence Thomas or Alito or John Roberts. But nothing has happened. See, what they're trying to do here is basically like a guy who maybe robs a bank, carjacks a vehicle, and then beats up an old lady, goes to court and say, you know what? Yeah, I did all that stuff, but now I'm good. I'm good. So we can just let all of this go. No, sorry, that's not the way it's going to be. You committed crimes, especially now that you say you had the rules in place before this code of ethics. So if you had the rules and you broke the rules, something should be done. But John Robert doesn't do anything. Nobody does anything in the Supreme Court. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. The thing about it is this shit has happened. And this 15-page document doesn't make us feel better about the Supreme Court. We still believe the Supreme Court is corrupt. And that's a problem. That's a problem because without a Supreme Court that can be trusted, we really don't have much of a democracy. That's one of the three branches that is bullshit. Unless, of course, you include the House of Representatives, then we have another part of the branch, the second branch, as bullshit too. So you can try to smooth this over best you can by this little document, but it doesn't fix anything. Clarence Thomas is still driving his $250,000 RV, which he's never paid back. He still had those trips and those vacations and the hunting trips and all that stuff. That's all occurred. John Roberts' wife is still making millions of dollars off feeding people into the Supreme Court. Alito, that fucking piece of shit, we know what he's doing. Doesn't fix any of that. And I don't think it's going to stop any of you fucks from doing it because you said these rules were already there. It didn't stop you then. Is it now going to stop you because you have a document? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to stop you at all. So nice try, motherfuckers. But here's what's going to happen. When 2024 comes along and the Democrats carry the House and the Senate, then there's some shit that's going to go down. Hopefully, they stack the Supreme Court. Take away power that you've so wonderfully enjoyed up to this point. Take away your power completely. And if that doesn't work, if we have control in the House and Senate, maybe we can impeach you motherfuckers. That is the only way we're going to change things. You've seen the problems with the Supreme Court. They're upset that we think they're corrupt pieces of shit. They don't like that. They blame us for that, even though they are corrupt pieces of shit. So they bend and say, okay, I'll come up with a document with a code of ethics. Well, too late, motherfucker. You've already broke these ethics. And these are ethics that you as Supreme Court justices should have known. This should be common knowledge to you. You know what the law is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a Supreme Court justice. But you broke them because you were untethered. You thought you can do anything. And this document doesn't fix shit. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. They're going to be disappointed when everybody isn't loving the Supreme Court again just because they wrote this fucking document. All right, we will take a quick break and we will be right back. So we all know Donald Trump has a problem with spewing incendiary, inflammatory, even inciting language. He says whatever comes into his head and just spews that shit out. There's a book coming out today. It's already come out. It came out at midnight last night. And it's coming from a guy by the name of Jonathan Karl. And he's an ABC News reporter. And he said the former president admitted to him that he hopes his supporters act on his words, even if it means violence. Can you believe that? Donald Trump said that out loud. That's the kind of motherfucker he is. That's why he's dangerous to this country. Now, that was the assertion of the Washington correspondent made Monday in an interview with MSNBC's Nicole Wallace when he discussed a conversation he had with Trump in August 2019 after mass shootings in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. Yeah, he's real sensitive. There were real concerns that there would be copycats, that would be more shootings, Karl told Wallace. Trump responded using phrases that echoed the propaganda of Nazi Germany, Karl said. Even though he might not know the history of it, he's using this language, Karl said, this language out of the Third Reich, enemy of the people. Karl said he asked the president if he was worried his supporters might take his words to heart, saying, "Aren't you concerned they will act on them?" Karl said Trump didn't miss a beat with his response. He said, "I hope they take my words to heart. I believe the press is the enemy of the people." Yep, spewing the Nazi propaganda. That's your guy, Donald Trump. Karl said he is still trying to figure out what would make a person say things that could inspire others to lash out. Maybe it's an inability to have any kind of empathy or understanding of consequences of your words. But his rhetoric is consistent. That's not new. And not having empathy or not caring about anybody else is part and parcel to being a narcissist. Now, Karl's comments came after a wild weekend in which Trump, in the words of MSNBC host Joe Scarborough, went full on Hitler and referred to political opponents as vermin during a Veterans Day speech in Claremont, New Hampshire. This is what people are worried about. They're concerned that if Donald Trump gets back in power, he's going to go on a revenge tour of all the people that were against him. And, I think that's a fair bet. I think he would do that. But the important thing to remember is he's not going to get back in power. People like to throw it out there. Oh, maybe it could be, possibly. It's not possible. Donald Trump is not going to win the presidency, just not going to win it. There is nobody that can tell me he is. And that may be one of the things that I ask our little Trump-lefuck buddy in our debate. Do you think Donald Trump will win the presidency in 2024? And of course, he'll say yes. And I'll say, please explain to me how you come to that conclusion. And then I'll explain to him that, well, he lost by 7 million votes in 2020. And What has he done since that time to gain steam, to gain votes and support? And I'll be interested to see what he says. If he does come up with something, I'll guarantee that I'll refute it and I'll point out how fucking dumb he is. So anyway, your favorite president, as Donald Trump would say, admits to inciting violence, admits to hoping that his people go out there and fight for him. You can see how dangerous this is for this country. It's not the kind of country we are. Donald Trump is not a leader. He's a cancer on this country who needs to be cut out ASAP. And hopefully with these legal procedures and the election in 2024, he will be cut out permanently. All right. Now, we're still dealing with this budget thing, okay? Today is November 14th. If we don't have some budget resolution by November 17th, which is 3 days, they're going to shut the country down. Now, Mike Johnson is hustling around, the Speaker of the House, trying to get this figured out. Because if he doesn't get it figured out, he's going to appear to be a failure, and the Republicans are going to take the hit for the shutdown. So he's got a lot of pressure. But the pressure isn't just there. It's also from his buddies with MAGA. They want him to shut the country down. They want him to create chaos, to demand draconian cuts that will never pass. So he's in a tough spot. Now, despite being elected via unanimous vote from his Republican colleagues, Mike Johnson does not have enough support to back his government funding plan without Democratic backing. But we know if he gets Democratic backing, that's going to piss off MAGA. They're going to vote to kick him out. So he's in a bad position. Now, theoretically, there'd be no reason for the Democrats to vote for this. But hold on. ABC News reports that Johnson is proposing a laddered solution to avoid a government shutdown, which would happen at the end of the week if President Joe Biden doesn't have an appropriations package to sign into law. Under Johnson's plan, there would be 2 new separate funding deadlines for Congress to meet, one on January 19th and one on February 2nd, with current funding levels for all agencies maintained in the meantime. Now, MAGA's not going to like that. They ain't going to like it because they want cuts. They don't want to maintain what it is. But here's the interesting thing. We're talking about a pretty simple procedure from years gone by. You come up with a budget, you pass it, everything's cool. But this time, this has become a problem. First time around, they had to come up with a continuing resolution to put it off for 3 months. And now, as you see, they're waiting the last 3 days to get this fucker done. Now they want to do another continuing resolution, but not just a regular continuing resolution, a laddered where there's 2 end dates. You see what's going on here? Our House of Representatives can't do a simple function. This is a simple thing. This should not be a problem, but his buddies, the MAGA fucks, are making it a problem. Now, in order to pass the House without Democrats' votes, Johnson can only avoid 4 defections from his own caucus. However, there are now at least 7 Republicans going on the record in opposition, meaning the new speaker will need buy-in from across the aisle if he hopes to get the majority necessary to send the appropriations bill to the U.S. Senate. Currently, Representatives Warren Davidson of Ohio, Bob Good of Virginia, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, Chip Roy of Texas, and George Santos have informed Johnson they plan to vote no on the bill in its current form. So he can't pass it with Republicans. The current short-term funding proposal includes a 1-year extension of the Farm Bill, no reform, status quo policies, and status quo funding levels. Disappointing is as polite as I can muster. I will be voting no, Representative Davidson tweeted. Hopefully, the consensus will result in a more reasonable bill. Here's the interesting part. The ball is now in the court of the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who just recently indicated, I think Democrats can live with that to avoid shutting down the country. Well, that's an interesting comment, isn't it? Why would he help the Democrats? Well, that's kind of a cutthroat thing to do when you think about it. If they vote for it and they pass it, then Johnson is on the hook, MAGA is fucked, and the country stays open. Hakeem Jeffries is just kind of fucking with their heads. While Jeffries previously spoke out against a latter solution, he also warned his colleagues against the danger of a government shutdown. He may agree to do it. He's thinking about it. He said, "We must keep the government open and stop the extremists from hurting America's economy." Johnson defended his proposal by saying it would stop the absurd holiday season omnibus tradition of massive loaded up spending bills introduced right before Christmas recess, adding that his laddered approach places our conferences in the best position to fight for fiscal responsibility, oversight over Ukraine aid, and meaningful policy changes at our southern border. Here's the thing. I told you last time, and I was right. Last minute, last day, they will come up with some answer and they will keep the government open. This is too big a deal and too damaging to the Republican Party. As I said, if they don't come up with some kind of budget to, or at least continuing resolution to keep it open, Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, will take a hit for being a fucking failure, which he is. Not to mention the fact if the country closed down, the Republicans are going to take a beating. So the Republicans, like they did last time and the time before, they have to bend. Unfortunately, MAGA is not flexible. And when they bend to keep it open, the country, MAGA is going to be pissed. And then what are they going to do? Well, they're probably going to go after Mike Johnson, spew some crazy shit, and further expose how divided the Republican caucus is. All of which is not very good for them come 2024. The Republicans are in a bad situation right now. The Democrats don't want the country to shut down, and they're willing to help to keep it open, but the Republicans don't want the Democrats to help. So what you going to do? When it comes down to it, they'll have to choose to keep the government open. They will have to get the help from the Democrats, and that will cause a further shit show on the Republican side of the House of Representatives. And frankly, Hakeem Jeffries, while he may have to hold his nose to vote for this particular budget thing to keep it open another 3 months, it's probably worth it to fuck with the Republicans. Now, yesterday, the lawsuit in New York, Letitia James lawsuit against Donald Trump, his family, and his company started back up. And we're in a new phase of this trial. The defense is now presenting their case. They already lost, you know that. But they're trying to do something to keep the numbers down as far as what Donald Trump is going to be fined, and they aren't going to be able to do that. But their star witness, their leadoff man, if you will, was Donald Trump Jr. That tells you what kind of shape they're in. This cokehead clown is their first witness. He took the stand Monday to, among other things, joke about perjury, praise his father's eye for sexiness in real estate, and compare one Trump Organization building to the National Museum of France that boasts the Mona Lisa among its collection, according to multiple reports. Now, CNN reported that Trump Jr. testified in the case, referred additions made to Trump Park Avenue as being like the Louvre with glass cubes added to provide more light. Yeah, it's just like the Louvre. Frank G. Runyon, a courts reporter with Law 360, detailed more of the testimony about the grandeur of Trump's organization assets, quoting Trump Jr. as saying the following: magical, a sexy place, amazing location, highest price per square foot, incredible, almost like the Louvre, very special, extra something, the ultimate penthouse, spectacular. Well, he's quite the salesman, isn't he? Now, Trump Jr.'s glowing praise, accompanied by more than 100 slides, did not stand up to cross-examination from the Attorney General's office, which pulled up a slide of Trump's Los Angeles golf course. And they asked, didn't the 18th hole at this golf course literally fall into the ocean? The attorney reportedly asked Trump. Trump Jr. agreed. This reverential testimonial doubles down on his brother's Eric Trump's commentary on Fox News over the weekend, during which he called Trump Organization holdings Mona Lisas of real estate. Responded Democratic political strategist Adam Park-Homenko, I honestly didn't think Trump could get any dumber. Eric Trump get any dumber. No, they can get dumber. And, you know, it's funny. One of the things they wanted to do is to give a presentation, like a video presentation of the Trump Organization. They wanted to introduce that into court. And of course, the prosecution wasn't for it because it really had no bearing on what was going to be going on in the case. But the judge did something interesting. The judge, Engeron, said, no, let them play the tape. Let them play the video and let them tell us how great the Trump Organization is. He did it kind of tongue in cheek. I don't think he intended it to sound like that, but it was. And it was basically saying, you motherfuckers are fucked, but go ahead, show us what you're going to tell us. And it'll be fun. As I say, the Attorney General's office objected after the attorneys presented this PowerPoint slide called the Trump story. They objected on the grounds that the presentation was untethered to anything relevant. But Engeron overruled the objection. Objections overruled. Let him go ahead and talk about how great the Trump Organization is. I think they got a few laughs there. Now, it's unclear how the history of the Trump Organization was relevant to the fraud allegations, but I think Judge Engeron was just having a little fun. Know what I'm saying? Now, there was a big story last night, and I saved this toward the end. This may not be the last story, but it's an important story. ABC News obtained video from former Trump's election lawyer Jenna Ellis's meeting with Georgia prosecutors in proffer sessions to discuss her recent plea deal. Now, during those proffer sessions, Ellis reportedly told prosecutors that she had been told that the president, Donald Trump, was simply not going to leave the White House, despite losing all of his challenges in the 2020 election. Now, in the video of the prosecutor's October 23rd proffer, she said that one of Trump's top aides, Dan Scavino, he was the deputy chief of staff. Now, what you have to understand about Dan Scavino, he started out as Donald Trump's chauffeur, and then he was a head of social media, and then all of a sudden he's deputy chief of staff. Boy, he sounds qualified. But Dan Scavino allegedly told her in an excited tone at a White House Christmas party weeks after the 2020 election that the boss, Trump, is not going to leave under any circumstances. The report noted that Scavino's comments came in a response to her apologizing over the lack of success with their election challenges in court, culminating with a Supreme Court loss that indicated their ability to challenge the election and that it was essentially over. Ellis was one of Trump's key lawyers paid to contest the 2020 presidential election, which made her a household name. She was all over the place. Ellis was paid some $195,000 by Trump's campaign between 2019 and 2021, and has since publicly stated she regretted her work on his behalf. The report added that Ellis also told prosecutors, and he said to me in a kind of an excited tone, "Well, we don't care and we're not going to leave." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, the boss," meaning Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said, "The boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We're just going to stay in power." Well, that's kind of damaging. That kind of goes to intent, wouldn't you say? Ellis went on to say to him, "Well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize." And he said, "We don't care." Oh, okay. You're going to usurp the entire U.S. government. How did that work out for you? Now, in late October, Ellis pled guilty to one count of aiding and abetting false statements and writings. Ellis, along with Trump and 17 other conspirators, were indicted on charges related to all kinds of illegal conspiracy to overturn the election. Now, national security lawyer Bradley Moss reacted to the report, writing, "This is devastating in my view. Trump never had any intention of complying with the election results. He was told repeatedly in the presence of a convicted co-defendant that he had lost. He ignored it and conspired with his lawyers to overthrow the election in any way. Presidents of the United States are under a lot of pressure all the time, so it's not unusual to hear one of them cursed." Donald Trump really believed that he was never going to leave office. Never going to leave office. He thought he was more powerful than the U.S. government, law enforcement, the DOJ, and everybody else, that he could just sit there and pout and hold his breath and stay. Well, as I say, clearly that didn't work out. But here's the interesting thing about these videos. How did they get leaked out? There's only two groups of people that have them, the prosecution and the defense. Prosecution certainly is not happy about these things being released. They wouldn't release those things, so that goes over to the defense. But why would the defense release these things, this damaging information? Well, one reason might be that that they're trying to take the edge off, try to get in front of it, knowing this is going to be pretty damning, then putting it out there and then complaining that somebody leaked it. And that somebody was probably them. Sounds like a ridiculous and a stupid strategy, but let's remember, we're talking about Donald Trump and his legal team. Stupid strategies are kind of their fare, and it's not surprising. Now, I don't know if they can do anything about it, if they can track down who leaked it, and if there's anything they can do. But this is an interesting turn of events. And this certainly doesn't bode well for Donald Trump, because, as I say, by this information, it shows his intent, which is important when they finally decide whether he's guilty or not. If this was a defense move, it was dumb as fuck on many levels. All right. In a new report by Politico's Jonathan Martin, President Joe Biden apparently called the legendary Democratic strategist David Axelrod a prick in private, likely related to the comments Axelrod has made about Biden's reelection strategy. You remember Axelrod? He's been on TV a lot, but for some reason he came out suggesting that because Biden's polling is down, he shouldn't run for president. You can understand why Joe Biden might be pissed that one of his own would go out there and try to undermine him. Now, CNN's Cassie Hunt asked Axelrod about this on CNN's Max's State of the Race on Monday. Axelrod, who was the architect of both of former President Barack Obama's electoral victories, brushed the comments off like any political veteran, called an expletive might. After stating that Biden wouldn't be the first to call him a prick, I guarantee you that. Axelrod defended Biden, but also defended his own criticism of Biden's campaign against Donald Trump. This is what he said. He said, listen, I understand he was irritated because I raised concerns that many, many Democrats had. And again, you know, my feeling is either get out or get going. But the status quo, the way they were approaching the campaign, this sort of what me worry attitude about the campaign was not going to get him anywhere. He needs to go. He continued, and the stakes are so high, Cassie. This isn't, you know, Mitt Romney or John McCain or anybody else on the other side. This is Donald Trump. It's a fundamental question as to what American democracy is going to look like the day after the next election. So the stakes are very high. He knows that. What I think he needs to take a sober look at the whole landscape. And yes, he's committed to moving forward. I get that. He ought to. But he ought to then look at what his campaign is doing and what they need to do and get out of this sort of referendum frame and go after Donald Trump every day, because Donald Trump will be the nominee of the Republican Party. Dave, I don't know that I agree with you. You may be right. I may be wrong. But there's just too much ahead for Donald Trump to survive. Anyway, so what it sounds like Axelrod was doing, most people took it as he's telling Joe Biden to get out of the race because the polls suck and let somebody else do it. And of course, Biden was pissed about it. And he referred to Axelrod as a prick. And let's be honest, it may not be that polite, but I would say it's accurate, you know? And I appreciate Joe Biden pointing out the obvious. But what it sounds like Axelrod was really trying to do is trying to light a fire under his ass, get him more going after this election, going after Donald Trump. And I get that. And I don't necessarily agree with him. Joe Biden seems to be low key, and the stakes are very high come 2024. So maybe Joe Biden does need to get a fire lit under his ass and start getting aggressive. That's how the Republicans continue to win. And as I've said, and as I've shown you here on the Rational Boomer podcast, sometimes you got to be tough. Sometimes you got to be aggressive. Sometimes you got to be a dick. Sometimes you got to be a prick. I can honestly say I've been all those things today. I'm kidding. But I understand what Axelrod is doing, but I don't know that that was the wisest move for his future, pissing off the president, suggesting he should get out of the race. Yeah, I don't know if that was smart. We'll see what Joe Biden does, but I do agree he should pick up the pace, get a little more aggressive. Now, one of the things we talked about with Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, he's got kind of a mysterious financial background. He doesn't seem to have a bank account. There's some weird shit going on with him. And that usually tells you there's some illegal shit going on. Now, when the new speaker, Mike Johnson, was asked on Fox News last week about why he had never reported having a bank account, Johnson didn't offer an explanation. Instead, he hammered the point that as a man of modest means, he understood the plight of normal Americans. I can relate to everybody else, Johnson told Fox News. We can relate to every hardworking American family, the Louisiana Republican continued. That's who we are. Huh. Are you, though? A thorough review of Johnson's financial situation, however, shows economic circumstances that hardly anyone can relate to, let alone most Americans. Now, the Daily Beast looked at a variety of records related to Johnson's finances stretching back more than a decade. And that reviews not only undercuts Johnson's suggestions of relatability, it also reveals irregularities in his financial disclosures and public statements about his professional life, finances, and biography. See what I told you? There's always something behind that fucking slimy facade. Now, a number of these findings also appear in a new ethics complaint from left-leaning nonprofit and transparency advocacy group End Citizens United. That complaint, which was filed with the House Ethics Committee on Monday, lays out multiple potential violations for this modest guy. Johnson's financial disclosures, including undisclosed gifts and blind spots in his spouse's income. Now, the Daily Beast has uncovered other inconsistencies about her income, along with new irregularities regarding the source and timing of Johnson's own earnings as a lawyer for right-wing causes. He has also filed contradictory financial statements about those earnings. Tiffany Muller, president of End Citizens United, provided a statement calling it laughable that Johnson doesn't report any savings or retirement accounts, alleging the new speaker's murky disclosures are clearly violating federal law. The American people deserve to know whether the Speaker of the House has financial conflicts of interest, but Speaker Johnson is clearly violating federal laws by hiding critical information from the public. It's laughable to believe that a person leading government funding negotiations doesn't have a reportable savings or retirement account. But beyond his own potential financial mismanagement, failing to disclose travel and his spouse's sources of income is against the law, and the Office of Congressional Ethics must investigate and hold him accountable. And this is what I've always said. You look at this guy, he tries to be the nice guy, says he's a modest guy, he doesn't have a lot of money, that's why nothing gets reported. These are the motherfuckers you dig up skeletons on, a lot of them, both in his personal life and his financial life. And let's be perfectly honest, if they were legit, why would you hide them? Especially when you're in a public service type of job. Everybody in politics is needing to reveal their money and where they get their money from. Because if they get their money from sketchy places, that puts them in a compromised position. And I'm guessing if you refuse to give information, that might suggest that you are in compromised situations. And if you are in a compromised situation, then maybe you shouldn't be Speaker of the House. Maybe you shouldn't even be in the House of Representatives. This is going to be interesting. We'll see if the Republicans do anything with it. After this budget thing, there may be a group of people like the MAGA fucks that don't like him anymore, and that shit will come out by way of the Republicans. That should be fucking entertaining. All right, we are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen and tolerate my scratchy voice and my intermittent coughing. It'll be gone eventually. It's getting better, but you got to do what you got to do, you know? Anyhow, I hope you have a great day. And of course, we will talk to you again tomorrow. And don't forget, Friday, we're going to have that debate with the fucking clown, Jeff_HVAC_69. I'm going to ask him about that 69 thing. And if he tells me something stupid, I'm going to make fun of that motherfucker. All right. Have a great day. We will talk to you again tomorrow.